the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory.
But it is a part of many sports, particularly those where speed is involved.
Well, guys, we made it. Part 10 in the Moment in NASCAR Where Time Froze series. I gotta be honest with you guys, I did not think this series was gonna make it this far, especially due to the fact that I thought it was like way over the top or something that was too niche for a racing channel. But you guys have proven me wrong, as this is one of my most requested series that I've had in my YouTube career. So thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart for letting me create this series for you guys, for you all to enjoy. I'm not sure how many more parts I'm going to add to the series, to be honest with you, but either way, this series is going to go down as one of the most impactful ones for my channel. Who knows, maybe this series will take me out of the NASCAR realm and I'll focus on other motorsports. You never know. But for now, let's just focus on what we have now, since you guys really enjoy it. But enough of all that. I know what you guys are here for, and that is to continue this amazing series that we have all come to enjoy together. So without further ado, why don't we look at some moments that not only shocked the racing world, but made it so that time was virtually suspended. So without further ado, for the 10th time on this channel, here are some moments handpicked by me in which I believe are moments in NASCAR where time froze. Being up front and close to the action on track is by far one of the most exciting experiences as a fan. It's something that I truly love while being on pit road on race day. Watching the cars come down pit road and seeing the crew members work vigorously in order to get the car back onto the racetrack in minimal time is simply exuberating. But the one glaring question that officials and concerned spectators have is how close is too close? We have seen accidents on pit road where drivers and pit crew members have been in the pathway of danger, but at the very least, we have never seen that same danger happen to fans. Except, that's not entirely true. In what many consider to be one of the most influential seasons in NASCAR history, 1979 saw what many believe to be one of the closest incidents to fans losing their life at the racetrack. It was the month of June at the iconic Michigan International Speedway. Near the end of the race, it was a neck-and-neck battle between driver Donnie Allison and Buddy Baker on claiming the victory in the Gabriel 400. However, that is not what this race is remembered for. Instead, the race is mostly remembered for an incident that happened in the middle of the race involving a relief driver by the name of Steve Pfeiffer. Pfeiffer hardly had any experience in the Cup Series up to this point. With that being said, Roger Hambly required a relief driver early in the race, making Steve Pfeiffer the driver of the number 17 car in only his third start. There was hope, though, that there would be no issues for the rookie driver to hop into the car with minimal experience. Well, that hope quickly diminished on a trip towards pit road during caution.
A moment ago, but now, whoa, trouble's coming off turn number 4.
We've got problems off the 4. Roger Hamby's car. It hits the retaining wall, flips over the retaining wall, and comes down on all 4 wheels. It scatters the spectators who would include.
We have been told that the driver, Pfeiffer, has minor injuries and is expected to be released from the hospital shortly. A photographer, Ray Cook, has suffered leg and ankle injuries which are not critical.
In what could only be described as pure inexperience, Steve Pfeiffer spun the car while attempting to come down pit road for maintenance. As he began to lose control, the car hit an embankment before the entrance of pit road, a subpar design to keep spectators and members behind the wall safe from any spinning cars. This didn't happen as the car hopped over the embankment and towards guests and photographers behind the pit wall. The scene was horrendous to say the least. At first glance, it looked like one person was pinned beneath the car and the pit wall, while another fan was swallowed up by the front end of the car, causing them to disappear underneath the carnage. Everyone presumed the worst, as it seemed to be almost impossible for someone to survive that kind of impact with a multi-thousand-pound machine. But by the grace of God, everyone in the accident survived. Steve Pfeiffer escaped the incident with a cut over his right eye and abrasions on his chest. While more shocking, the photographer who was hit on the initial impact, Ray Cook, suffered a fracture on his right leg but survived. Both were sent to the Foot West Hospital in nearby Jackson, where they were both able to make a full recovery. To this day, it's still considered to many as the luckiest moment in NASCAR history, knowing that no lives were lost during this horrendous accident, showing everyone that day that no matter how safe you may feel behind the pit wall, there is always a chance that something can happen with just one wrong move.
The Miller Genuine Draft Rusty Wallace stock car. It's tearing up tracks everywhere.
Well, I've seen a lot of big crashes at Talladega, but this is the longest one I've ever seen. Let's take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back.
Ah, jeez. I gotta come in, guys. My engine's out of fuel. What do you mean you gotta come down pit road again? This is the third time in the last 20 laps. Oh, I'm sorry. Who's driving this car? When the driver says the engine's empty, it needs to be filled up. So I gotta come down pit road. Fine. Bring it in. Alrighty, boys. Fill her on up.
Now that Liquid Death has entered the world of iced tea, they are now conquering the world with 6 hardcore flavors. Each killer can is filled with agave and vitamins that helps ambush your taste buds and fills your engine with pure rehydration. Best of all, Liquid Death's iced tea contains only 30 calories and 75% less sugar than rival brands. Competition doesn't stand a chance.
Thanks, team. She's all full. Now let's go win this race. Well, at least we don't have to come down pit road again.
Hey, team, I think we need another refueling.
Are you kidding me? Make sure to go to liquiddeath.com and grab yourself a drink of Liquid Death. Don't be scared. It's just iced tea.
In the last story, we saw how devastating an embankment can be to causing carnage to race cars, and one of the most infamous dirt embankments in NASCAR history has to be the embankment that used to be located right before pit road at Daytona International Speedway. Today, it has been replaced by pavement and safer barriers, thus making it safer for competitors. Unfortunately, in the 80s, this was one of the most dangerous areas in all of NASCAR. With grass that made the cars more unstable, the dirt embankment that left little to no give, and an angle that was almost perpendicular to the racing surface. This region had the recipe for some terrible accidents. Ricky Rudd and Randy LaJoie are 2 incidents that come to mind, as they are considered to many as the worst during that time. However, I argue that the worst incident to come from this dirt embankment comes from an expedition race in 1984. For the 1984 Daytona 500, nearly 72 cars entered into the Great American Race in hopes to run in the iconic race. Since only 42 drivers could qualify into the event, roughly 30 cars were going to miss out in competing. While a huge bummer for drivers like Nats Peters and Jim Hurlburt, who failed to qualify in the twin 125s, there was still an event that they could compete in as a small reward. In the early 80s, NASCAR was playing with the idea of running consolation races for the drivers who failed to make it into the Daytona 500. The first 3 events were mediocre due to the lower car count. However, for 1984, since so many entered the event, nearly 25 cars stayed out to run in the consolation race. Hurlburt and Peters, who were both car owners, were 2 who decided to stay for the following day to compete in the 30-lap race. Seemed like a great idea. That was until lap number 9, when the aforementioned dirt embankment reared its ugly head.
And then on Friday, an accident was compounded with a second car colliding with one that went out of control. An explosive fireball resulted.
On lap 10, while following JD McDuffie out of the exit of turn number 4, Nats Peter lost control of his car, causing him to slide down towards the infield. The car backed into the guardrail dirt embankment right before the pit entrance. This not only destroyed the back end of the car, but ricocheted the vehicle back onto the racetrack, right into the pathway of Jim Hurlburt. Hurlburt had little time to react and hit the already battered Peters machine at over 180 miles per hour. The impact ruptured a fuel cell on the 60 car, leading to a fireball across the front stretch. The fireball was so massive and intense that multiple photographers stated that the heat itself singed their eyebrows. Both Nat's Peter and Jim Hurlburt's cars were destroyed and badly burned, and many assumed that the same fate happened for the drivers inside the cars. Somehow, though, both drivers survived the terrifying incident. Nat's Peter, while his car was still burning, stopped on the track's grassy apron, jumped from the car, and collapsed. Even though he suffered 2 major blows from inside the car, he was transported to the Halifax Medical Center for treatment for first-degree facial burns and possible pelvis injury. Jim Hurlburt in the 34 car, however, wasn't as fortunate. Hurlburt's car continued to scrape the outside wall, while fire engulfed the rear of the car. Hurlburt was able to stop the car 100 yards later, but had to wait for rescuers to help assist him out of the car. This extra time probably led to Jim to suffer first and second degree burns on his face and arms from the crash, along with facial lacerations, broken teeth, and a severe fractured right ankle. He was placed in the intensive care unit to undergo surgery, but eventually made a full recovery. This marked the 3rd crash that week where a car suffered insurmountable damage, partially caused by the poor structure of the inside wall. By the time they returned a year later to the track, the infield section was completely redone with newly laid pavement all the way back towards turn number 4, along with an infield wall that was more parallel with the track and no dirt backfilling the wall itself. An improvement that has seen some intense wrecks to this very day, but still safer than what it was in 1984. Consolation races quickly faded out after the horrendous crash, as the following year would be the final one that we would ever see. And finally, for Nat's Peter and Jim Hurlburt, it would be both their last ever attempt at trying to race in the NASCAR Cup Series, a decision that I'm sure was influenced by this terrifying accident in 1984. The final story that we will talk about in today's video is, in my opinion, one of the most terrifying incidents in NASCAR history. Although this happened nearly 60 years ago, the images and video are still frozen in many people's mind due to the severity and images of the incident. If there was one story that I would recommend to skip over if you don't want to hear about the tragic case, then this is the one. With that said, let's continue. The year is 1969, and Daytona International Speedway is getting ready to celebrate its biggest race weekend once again at the iconic racetrack. Drivers in both the Grand National Series, along with the Sportsman Division, look to etch their names in the history books as becoming one of the next drivers to win at the 2.5-mile racetrack. One of those said drivers in the Sportsman Division was a 28-year-old driver that was raised in Massachusetts and had a knack for racing at a very young age, Don McTavish. Don first started to catch the racing bug as early as 1955, competing in demolition derbies in the Northwood region. Although not considered a traditional style of racing, McTavish eventually entered the Sportsman Division in the early 60s and competed against the likes of Pete Hamilton, Rennie Charlin, Red Farmer, and even Ralph Earnhardt. In 1966, he was able to beat all those legends by securing the 1966 championship in the Sportsman Division, his only championship in NASCAR. Don McTavish's goal was to always compete against the greats in the Grand National Series, but before he could do that, he needed to get accustomed to the tracks that they raced on, one of them being Daytona. and he did just that in February of 1969. Little did anyone know at the time that this race would be his last. On February 22, 1969, Don McTavish qualified 6th and started in the Permatex 300 at Daytona in his 1966 Mercury Comet, his first ever race at the Superspeedway. Although he had a great starting position in the race, he was still inexperienced on a track of this magnitude and speed. Nevertheless, Don did what any driver would have done in his place and took the risk. The first few laps were being laid down at an impressive speed of over 180 miles per hour, and everything seemed to be going well for the Massachusetts driver. However, that all changed on lap number 9, when Don McTavish lost control and headed towards the outside wall. What happened next was nothing short of devastating.
A tragic accident took place on the speedway. The cars were coming around the 4th turn when suddenly McTavish's number 5, a 1966 Comet, went out of control, rammed the outside wall, the engine and transmission was torn out of the car, and it spun then wildly down the track as you see here. Coming along was Stan Summers of Savannah in car 27, who hit the car head-on, sending it into the infield. Summers was not injured, nor was Hank Thomas in car 92, who was also involved. But unfortunately, Don McTavish lost his life in this crash.
When Don McTavish's number 5 Comet Mercury struck the outside wall, he hit where an access gate was located, causing the car's entire front end to violently rip off the frame. This led to the car spinning vigorously across the racetrack with the driver fully exposed while strapped to the seat. The image of Don McTavish sitting limp in the car while it spins is eerie enough, as it appeared that he was either unconscious at this point or already gone. As the car came to rest, the exposed front end of the car faced the oncoming traffic as cars came by at almost full speed. That's when Sam Summers emerged from the smoke and was heading in the direction of where Don McTavish was sitting. Sam had no time to react and hit the stalled car fully head-on. Don McTavish stood no chance of surviving the brutal accident. When the dust settled, multiple cars were battered in the incident, but none worse than McTavish's. Sam Summers suffered heavy front-end damage but left the crash with no injury. Don's car was almost split in two, while the driver was still strapped in the car. There are photos of the aftermath, but for obvious reasons, I'm not going to show them as they are far too graphic to show. McTavish was pronounced dead at the scene. He was only 28 years old. Don McTavish's passing marked the 6th death to happen at Daytona International Speedway, a number that was starting to rapidly increase the years that followed after his tragic passing. The cause of the incident was mainly due to the faulty assembly of the gate opening between Turn 4 and the tri-oval, a hazard that seemed to be altered by the time NASCAR returned for the 1970 Daytona 500. To my knowledge, a tragic accident like this has never happened again in NASCAR, except for 2 incidents that happened at Bristol, but luckily both drivers walked away. Don McTavish was a true talent in his time. Although he was never able to reach the Grand National Series, his success was recognized by many thanks to his success in the Northeast, along with the championship in the Sportsman Division in 1966. His legend lives on in the New England Auto Racers Hall of Fame. However, his legacy also lives in infamy on the darker side of racing as being involved in one of the most terrifying incidents in racing history, making it a moment forever frozen in time.